Ding dong, the witch is dead. Dun, 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 dun. John Bolton has been fired in especially humiliating fashion. On top of that, fired by tweet in the classic Trumpian manner. And that's a good thing. Now, Bolton never should have been hired in the first place. It was obviously one of Trump's worst personnel decisions of the entire presidency, if not the absolute worst. So the fact that he was allowed to be in power for 18 months, roughly, is a huge blemish on Trump's tenure. Because Bolton, for one thing, is one of the few remaining unrepentant Iraq war hawks in the entire country. He still maintains that it was a great idea. There were just some hiccups along the way. And that puts him in a very small category of dead enders who will not concede the obvious, which is that it was a heinous error. Even John McCain, on his deathbed, recanted his support for the Iraq War. So for John Bolton to be installed into this position where he has singular power over the conduct of U.S. foreign policy is just unforgivable and never made sense, really, even from a pure political perspective for Trump, because it just did not accord with his sensibilities. And I don't buy this rationalization that you hear often from Trump supporters where it was supposed to be this good cop, bad cop routine. And Bolton was the bad cop and he was supposed to be the counterweight to the good cop, which was Trump, or blah, blah, blah. There's no evidence that that was actually a successful strategy or that it bore any kind of policy fruit. He was just a thorn in the side of anybody who wanted to get something reasonably good done. Just take the past 9 months. I mean, this guy has a trail of destruction that is unparalleled. Undermined the withdrawal order from Syria that Trump issued in December of 2018. Scuttled and blew up the Hanoi summit with Kim Jong-un in February. Advocated for airstrikes against Iran in June. Along the way, he entirely botched the attempted coup in Venezuela. And then most recently, he was one of the more vociferous opponents in the administration of this plan, as haphazard as it might have been, to bring the Taliban and the Afghan government to Camp David for some kind of peace accord to bring an end to the war in Afghanistan, which, as you may know, has been going on for 18 years. So nothing Bolton did accomplished anything of value if you have a remotely sane perspective on foreign policy, and you see that reflected across the political spectrum with people on the left and right celebrating his demise. Now, there's a weird dynamic where Democratic officials can't seem to bring themselves to applaud or at least welcome the termination of Bolton. Like, for example, Chuck Schumer said, "Today's action by the president is just the latest example of his government by chaos approach and his rudderless national security policy." Let me just emphasize this, please, for God's sake. However chaotic the administration may be, however norm-violating the administration may be in your perspective, any ancillary consideration ought to be obviously overridden by what is of paramount importance, which is that Bolton no longer wields power to create havoc. So if you have some kind of process concern, at this point, I have to question seriously your judgment. Chris Murphy came at me on Twitter, bizarrely enough, and said that he wasn't Murphy claiming that Bolton departing was necessarily a bad thing, although let me just read you what his original tweet was from Murphy. Quote, "I am legitimately shaken by the grave instability of American foreign policy today." No, you should be gravely shaken by the fact that Bolton was in power, and then you should be marginally less shaken now that he is no longer in power. It's really not that complicated. Tulsi managed to say that, in effect. She said, quote, "Good riddance. If Trump really was for peace, he never would have hired Bolton, Pompeo, Haley, and the rest of those neocons in the first place." Bingo. So Pelosi, Schumer, Murphy, rather than posturing as the guardians of norms and the defenders of stability, take a moment, catch your breath, and just realize that Bolton being pushed out is actually a good thing for global peace, if that's something that you're interested in, which they may not be. So there you have it. Sayonara, Johnny boy. If you're a Bolton acolyte, don't worry. There's still a decent chance that Sheldon Adelson will recommend somebody who is comparably insane to replace Bolton. Now, Bolton is probably at the high watermark of insanity, so I don't know if anybody even exists who's going to surmount him in that area, but you could probably get a few gradations below Bolton if Adelson gets his way. And he's the guy who Trump loves to placate in terms of his foreign policy decision-making, so I would not be shocked if the next individual has the Sheldon stamp of approval. All right. Talk to you later.